Just had dinner, so I'm doing real well.
Aren't we the lucky one?
Do you have dinner also?
A little bit earlier. I would call it more like a brunch. Feeling good though.
Yeah.
Had dinner, so I'm doing real well. Councilmember Mendoza-Navarro on? I want to remind her she has the pledge tonight. I don't see her yet. Councilmember Mendoza-Navarro?
Yes.
You have the pledge tonight.
Yes. Thank you.
We will call the revised Selma City Council regular meeting. Actually, we will come back into session from the closed session, and I will ask our interim city attorney to give a report on the reportable action.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session on the two matters that are on your special City Council meeting agenda. All the members were present for the entire closed session. And with respect to the claim that's on the agenda, there is no reportable action. With respect to the case that's listed on the agenda, the council approved the city's defense of the election contest filed by former City Council member Avalos against Council member Mendez-Navarro and against Brandy Orth, the county clerk registrar. The vote was as follows. Mayor Pro Tem Cho, Councilmember Trujillo, and Councilmember Mendoza-Navarro voted yes, and Mayor Robertson and Councilmember Guerra voted no. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Interim City Attorney. With that, we will adjourn the closed session, and we will open the Selma City Council regular meeting, February 1st, 2021. It is 6:04 p.m. and I will read the COVID notice. On March 4th, 2020, Governor Newsom proclaimed a state of emergency in California as a result of the threat of COVID-19. On March 17th, 2020, Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N-2920, superseding the Brown Act-related provisions of Executive Order N-2520 issued on March 12th, 2020, which allows a local legislative body to hold public meetings via teleconferencing and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public seeking to observe and to address the local legislative body. Pursuant to Executive Order N-2920, please be advised that some or all of the City of Selma Council will participate in meetings via teleconference. Pursuant to Executive Order N-2920, and given the current health concerns, members of the public can access meetings streamed live online on our YouTube page. Members of the public may not attend the meeting in person. In lieu of attendance at the meeting, the public can provide public comments verbally for the City Council consideration by calling in on the number posted on our agenda. Staff will unmute the public during the public comment portion of the meeting. Alternatively, the public can send correspondence to the City Council regarding agenda items by emailing public comment at cityofselma.com by 5 p.m. the day of the meeting with the subject line Selma City Council Meeting Correspondence Item Number or City of Selma Non-Agenda Item. All correspondence that does not relate to a specific item on the agenda will be made part of the official record of this meeting and will be referred to the city manager or other staff for any appropriate action or attention. Correspondence that does relate to a specific item on the agenda will be addressed as appropriate during consideration of the agenda item to which it relates. Contact the city clerk with any questions by phone at City Hall at 891-2200-559 area code, extension 3104, or by email using the email address referenced above. If requested, the agenda and backup materials will be made available in appropriate alternative formats to persons with a disability as required by Section 202 of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the federal rules and regulations adopted in implementation thereof. Any person who requires a disability-related modification or accommodation in order to observe and or offer public comment may request such reasonable modification, accommodation, aid, or service by contacting the city clerk by email at rainaR@cityofselma.com or by telephone at 891-2200, same area code of 559, extension 3104, no later than 48 hours before the meeting. With that, we will have our invocation led by Pastor Nelson Schwam of the Church of the Redeemer.
Mayor Robertson, Mayor Pro Tem Cho, Council Members Trujillo, Guerra, and Mendoza Navarro, thank you for the opportunity to come and offer a prayer of invocation for this council meeting. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this day that you have given us, and I rejoice in your work within our lives and within our community. I thank you for the community of Selma and for the individuals, families, churches, organizations, and businesses that have worked hard to bring opportunities and hope to the community in which we live. I pray for the families in our community who have recently experienced loss and illness in their homes, in their families, and in their neighborhoods from the COVID-19 virus. Bring healing and peace to our many homes and neighborhoods. I pray your presence and blessing over this council meeting tonight, and pray that you would give wisdom and grace to each council member and to each city staff member as they continue their work for our community. Give wisdom where wisdom is needed and grace where grace is needed. I pray all this is done. I pray that all this would be done for your glory. I pray this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guerra.
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza Navarro.
Here.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cho.
Here.
Mayor Robertson.
Here. Potential conflicts of interest. Any council member has a potential conflict of interest may announce the item now and recuse themselves from discussing or voting on the matter. Oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the City Council on any issue within its jurisdiction, but not on the agenda. No action or discussion may take place on the items presented during oral communication. Issues raised may be referred to the city manager for further review. Speakers will kindly limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. Do we have any oral communications tonight, City Clerk?
Mayor Robertson, I'd like to announce that we would ask each caller to please raise their virtual hands to let us know that you would like to provide a comment. If you are calling in using your telephone, I ask that you please use *9 to raise your virtual hand to advise that you would like to comment. I currently see 2 people that have raised their hands. Mr. Murray, you have 3 minutes. Please unmute your line.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Raina. Good evening, Council members. My name is Kevin Murray. I'm with the Selma Auto Mall. I have a quick request I told that I needed to get from the City Council. I want to have Mr. Dwight Nelson and me put on the Planning Commission agenda for February 26th regarding the Stillman Street development, Dinuba Floral Project, Selma Grove, and Rockwell Park. So I'm trying to get both of us on the agenda February 22nd, please.
22nd or 26th?
Do I have my date wrong?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as of yet, we're not certain that we'll be having a planning commission meeting in February. We've shared that absolutely when we have our next planning commission meeting, there is the opportunity to come in and speak on oral communications during that time, or what we have suggested that Mr. Nelson and the members of his team may want to do is we are intending to have City Council made a request that we have a workshop on the northwest corner, the northwest region of the City of Selma, the traffic circulation and development in that area, which is precisely the area that Mr. Nelson and Mr. Murray are discussing. And that would be an appropriate time to actually be part of that workshop where we're going to be talking about Floral Avenue and the traffic circulation and Danuba overpass, that this project really, or this area of development that they have, want to share their concerns about. That would be a perfect venue to have that discussion with the City Council.
And when are we having that?
In February.
In February. So about the same time as the Planning
sooner.
Commission meeting Mr. Murray's referencing. Mr. Murray, did you get that?
Yeah, I didn't get a date, and I'm unclear on the forum.
We don't have a date yet, but the team is working on that. We intend to do it in February, so it'd be later this month. And it would be a special workshop specifically on development and traffic circulation in the area that you're mentioning, Mr. Murray. So we will keep you and Mr. Nelson apprised of the date as soon as we have it.
May I ask why there wouldn't be a Planning Commission meeting this month?
The Planning Commission meets when there is a project that they need to advise on.
So, Mr. Murray, maybe you could take that back to Mr. Nelson, who's probably listening as well. And if you have any questions, maybe get back to the city manager on that during the week regarding the content or scope, or quite frankly, your suggestions about the format of the meeting. And with that, we need to move on to our next oral communications. Thanks, Mr. Murray. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Our next caller who has raised their virtual hand, caller ending in 565. You have 3 minutes. May I have your name?
Good evening. Hi, this is Leslie Nelson.
Hi, Mrs. Nelson. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. I would like to approach the idea of celebrating Pride Month for our LGBT plus community and their families here in Selma, and to those who visit. June is Pride Month, and I would also like to ask our city to show its support by putting up a couple of banners during the month of June. I know that many of our cast members within the Selma Art Center are from the LGBT plus community, and I feel having a banner at the Art Center also during Pride Month would be a wonderful idea to show our support to them as well. I would like to ask if this be possibly put on the agenda, and would like to also ask if this might be a possibility for our city of Selma.
Thanks, Ms. Nelson. Appreciate your comments. City Manager.
Mayor, members of council, if you'd like us to put this on a future agenda, we'll do that with your direction.
Every council member okay with that? Putting this on a future agenda? Okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
You have unanimous consent. Please put it on a future agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Is that it for oral communications?
Hi, for those, I do see we have a couple of callers that just came on. Callers, as I mentioned earlier, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand to advise us if you'd like to comment. Hi, Mrs. Delgadillo. Do you have comments for council regarding oral communication?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Robertson, those are all the hands that we had raised at this time.
We'll move on to special presentations. At this time, our first presentation tonight will be on homelessness by Fresno County. Good evening, Ms. Moreno.
Good evening. My name is Laura Moreno. I am with the County of Fresno. I am a program manager for the Department of Social Services. And in my area resides a lot of the homeless services that take place for our community. As well, I'm also the chair of the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care. And with me this evening is Sonia de la Rosa. who is a principal analyst with the CAO's office for the County of Fresno. So we are going to be presenting to you, and Sonia's going to jump in when she needs to, and she may have some comments as well at the end of this. Sonia, did you want to add anything before I get started?
No, go ahead and get started.
Can you turn your volume up just a little bit, Laura? Ms. Moreno?
Sure.
It's just, we can hear you, but it's just a little faint.
All right, maybe I'll get a little closer. I will put up my PowerPoint, and I'm going to share with you the services that we have in Selma that are funded through the County of Fresno, how we got there, how we got to where we're at right now, and some of the things that are going on in the community and where we think we need to go next. So give me a moment here. Oh, I gotta share my screen. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm with the County of Fresno, Department of Social Services. I'm also the chair of the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care. The county has been providing homeless services for a number of years. It's probably been over 20 years, at least 20 to 30 years. First started with emergency shelter grant, and in 2019 was really where there was a big infusion of homeless services, homeless funding actually from the state of California that sort of got the ball rolling with things. And last year with COVID, there were some additional dollars that came down around homelessness to prevent the spread of COVID in the homeless community. So just a little bit on a timeline. In March, about the middle of March was when the CAO's office, the CAO for the County of Fresno, proclaimed a local emergency around COVID. And so I recall this distinctly, where it was on the weekend, and I got a call and said, we've got to get on a call so that we can talk about what we are going to do to prevent the spread of homelessness in our homeless community. Because with folks who are both sheltered homeless in shelters that we had, as well as those that were on the street, we wanted to make sure, and the CAO as well as the Director of Public Health was very concerned that there not be a spread of COVID among our homeless population. And so March 17th, the Board of Supervisors ratified the proclamation of the local emergency. And around the same time, we were able to immediately put some shelters together to bring people inside, specifically thinking that it would be a short-term thing. So when COVID first really took hold in the Central Valley and in Fresno County, we really didn't know that much about it. We didn't really think that it was going to be a long-term thing. Some of the initial funding that came out from the state was the first to put out COVID-specific money for the homeless. It was SB 89. And we really thought, well, okay, we'll just need to put this together for a few months. And so we looked at who could actually provide this. And our first, what we term as COVID shelters, were in the Metro Fresno area. So we had some homeless shelters that we had just started in 2019 that were low barrier shelters, meaning that there wasn't a program attached to it. People could come as they were. And we had actually started about 130 beds. The City of Fresno had also started a low barrier shelter in 2019, and they had about 50 beds. So we had just under 200 beds that were added in 2019. And so we still had about 2,000 people who were on the street homeless throughout Fresno County. And so with this funding from the state and with some of our partners, we were able to put together a shelter that was just pretty much just a shelter to bring people inside, to feed them, but we weren't really looking at long-term services. We weren't really looking at a whole lot of services at all, other than ensuring that they were not on the street and that we could keep the COVID virus from really taking hold in our homeless community. And so that was the beginning of this, in the beginning of March. In early April, we started looking around and said, gosh, you know, we have these new services, but we really need to do something in our rural areas, because we know that is a big need as well. And so though we put a lot of the beds together in the city of Fresno, we really looked around to see what else is available and where are there folks that are unsheltered that we could bring inside. And so the county reached out to a number of cities. We looked at the last point in time count. We looked to see where the highest number of unsheltered folks were. So we reached out to a couple of the communities in the east side of the county as well as the west side of the county. We reached out to Reedley, we reached out to Sanger, we were looking in the Coalinga area. And really what we were able to do was to partner with a provider in Selma, because not only did we need a place to shelter people, and this was where the governor's Project Room Key really started up, and they were looking at, the state was looking at various hotels throughout the state for use as emergency shelter. And so we were able to find the Super 8 in Selma that had the rooms, that was willing to rent them out as a shelter. And we were also able to find a provider. And so at that point, it was Selma Community Outreach Ministries. Selma Com had started their involvement with the Continuum of Care in 2019, and they had subcontracted with WestCare and were providing some rapid rehousing services to the homeless. And so we reached out to them to see if they could provide the service, and they could. They agreed to do that. And that was how we started with having 30 rooms that were being rented out of the Selma 8 with services, the food services and the monitoring services provided by Selma Com. And we also put in place security services. And so in May was when those started actually happening and the services started being provided. May 8th is when that started. So the services provided by Selma Com at the Selma, at the motel, Super 8, at the Super 8. So who qualifies for the services? Really, it was just homeless individuals and families, primarily residing in Selma, but we do, so this shelter was part of the larger system that the County of Fresno and the Continuum of Care put together. And as well, the City of Fresno wanted to make sure as well that we were providing something in the rural areas. And so we fill shelters through outreach teams, and we fill shelters through coordinated entry system, but we really look at who's already in the area. So primarily the people that were being offered this service and that took advantage of the service were people that were residing in Selma. There were one or two folks that ended up coming from outside of Selma, because the other thing that we looked at is what are the areas around Selma that folks could access. And that was, I think that we had somebody from Parlier that actually came to the shelter in Selma at some point. But I will say it's primarily the residents and the homeless people that were already residing in Selma. The services that were being provided were low barrier emergency shelter. So that means that folks come in with their possessions, their partners, and their pets. So if they had a small pet, they could come in. If they had a partner, if they had a family unit, they were welcome to come in with their family unit. They received 2 prepared meals a day that were being provided by Selma Com. There were monitors there as well as security. So there were 24-hour staff presence. There was, we started with 2 shifts of monitors from Selma Com and 1 shift of security, but then we moved to 1 shift of the Selma Com staff and 2 shifts of security. And so there are 30 rooms with a minimum of 60 beds, and this has allowed up to 75 people to shelter in place. And I will tell you that when we, again, looked at this and began the services in May, we really didn't think it was going to go this long. We were, in the beginning, we were thinking June. By June 30th, we should be done with this. And when we got closer to May, we thought, oh, okay, no, this is not going to be over in June. So we better extend all of our services, including the one in Selma and the things that we had going on in Fresno, through September, October. And then as we got closer to that date as well, we looked and said, okay, we've got to go through the end of the year because this is not going to resolve itself anytime soon. And so these shelters were set to expire December 30th. And then the state issued some additional funding, and we were able to keep them open past December. But that, again, that was a decision that we made in November because the funding got released. So we did have a switch in provider during this year, during 2020. And we went to WestCare to begin providing those on-site staff services. So SelmaCom was providing this service in Selma, and they also were providing the service in Sanger. So we were able to rent 11 to 14 rooms in Selma, in Sanger, and SelmaCom agreed to provide those services. And so come December 1st, we changed the Selma provider to WestCare, and SelmaCom continued to provide the services in Sanger. I will tell you that Sanger services just ended. Those ended January 31st. So WestCare began providing the wrap services in December. They also prepare 2 meals a day, which they subcontract through SelmaCom to do, as SelmaCom, I know, feeds the homeless in the community. And so WestCare is getting those meals from SelmaCom. There's, again, 24-hour staff presence and on-site security to ensure that there's safety going on there, and that folks were in the hotels, that they were doing what they were supposed to do. There's a full-time case manager on site Monday. I think it's Monday through Saturday, though this is probably more updated, Monday through Sunday during business hours. So what we did when we contracted through WestCare is that we added those wrap services that were more than just bringing people inside. So I told you in the beginning of this, we really didn't think this was going to go that long, and these shelter services were just to bring people inside so that they would not be exposed to COVID, and we wouldn't have a rampant outbreak of COVID in our homeless community. We were not thinking at that point when we put these together about transitioning people out of homelessness into permanency. And so as this drug on in 2020, in the fall, we really started thinking, okay, so we've got to add some services because we cannot exit people into homelessness. This is a great opportunity. During this COVID process last year, we added almost 400 beds to our existing shelter. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to really work with folks that many had come in for the very first time. They had not been in shelter for a very long time. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to really work with them and to get them to permanency. So what we did is we added those case manager services to the WestCare contract. And so they are providing supportive services intentionally to help people exit these shelters into permanency. And so they're providing transportation assistance, medical assistance, ancillary services. They're making linkages to try to increase people's income, to assist them to find jobs, whatever it is that they need to exit to permanency. And the information is then entered in the Continuum of Care's homeless management information system, which is able to link them with open programs. So I will tell you that there is a whole host of homeless services, not just these COVID shelters, but in partnership with the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, there are some specific COVID shelters that are still in place. There are triage shelters, which are low barrier emergency shelters with wrap services. We have bridge services, bridge shelters, that is sort of that next step. So if folks have a housing plan, but they still need some time to develop that plan or to really put it into place, then they enter into the bridge shelters. There are also some navigation services that are provided, some outreach services that are provided. There is some rental assistance, which we call rapid rehousing, to assist people for anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to keep them housed and to assist them with their rent. And then there's permanent supportive housing, which is for those folks who have a higher level of need. Usually there's some mental health issues. There might be some chronic substance abuse. And so those are for folks that really need some additional assistance and are not going to manage on their own really well at this point. So the question is, how long are these services going to go? And I know for you in Selma, you want to know how long is this going to continue. So as I mentioned, These services were set to expire in December, and in November, the state infused additional money to use specifically on Project Room Key, which was the motel rooms for folks that were being affected by COVID. And so we have pushed some of those agreements out. As I mentioned, Sanger was only pushed out to the end of January. One of our sites in Fresno will go until March 30th. The very latest that those sites are going are June 30th. So with Selma, I think the longest and the latest point that we would have this service would be June 30th, because that's when the funding runs out for what we're doing. But we're sort of keeping it open and taking a look at what's going on. And what we're trying to do, of course, is to exit people into permanency, and probably for those shelters that are set to close in June, is when we get to about March or April, as we move people into permanency, we will not be backfilling those empty beds, because we do not want to get to the point on June 30th where we still have people in emergency shelter and we have nowhere for them to go. So on here, you'll see some of that information that I just mentioned. What are DSS and WestCare doing to prevent a resident's exit to the street? That is definitely not in our plan to exit folks on the street. We just came off of a 100-day challenge at the Continuum of Care, and the city and the county of Fresno engaged in, 100-day challenge to rehouse people. And so that was an intentional push to move people from the COVID shelters into permanency. And that started in the middle of October, finished in the middle of January, and we were able to rehouse 78 people during that time. And so we're going to be entering another phase of a 100-day challenge to do just that. And we are focusing on these COVID shelters so that we don't exit anyone onto the street. So with that, I will ask if you have any questions, and I'm going to shut my screen off.
Council have any questions for Ms. Moreno?
No. Yes, Ms. Moreno, I have a question. Back in October, in one of our council meetings, we were informed that WestCare had taken over, I believe in November, and that the program was funded through the end of March. And now you're saying that it's going to be funded through June, the end of June. My question to you is, you've closed Sanger, or Sanger's ended in January. So what is the capacity for Selma at this point? My understanding is back in October, we had 80 individuals that were at the Super 8 hotel.
So there are 30 rooms that are rented for this effort. And so it's been 30 rooms the whole time. The census goes a little up and down depending on who is actually in those rooms. So sometimes you have families where there could be 5, right? A total of 5 in that family, or you might have some where there's only 2. So the census will go up and down a little bit. I think it's been probably as low as 61 and maybe as high as the mid to high 70s. So, and you know, this is all fluid is the thing. Like I mentioned, we really, there were several times in 2020 when we just thought, okay, this is it. We've run out of money, because that's really what it's about, is that we have to have enough money to continue it. We know there's a need, but is there money to back up that need? And so there were several points in 2020 where we thought that we were getting to the end of it. And then we have to look at the capacity to provide the services as well. And so with that late infusion of money in November, and we also have some CDBG funding that the county received that we're putting into this effort, that's where we're saying, and then again, the capacity, meaning that we had WestCare come in, but we need WestCare to have the capacity to continue to provide the service. And so that's where our original agreement ran through the end of February, which is where we got the March number. And we are currently renewing it through the end of June. We don't know that we're going to go that far, but we need to have the ability to pivot should something come up. And as I said, the sooner that we can get folks rehoused, then we probably won't be backfilling those beds, because we don't want to end this and have people that we don't have a place for.
Yeah, and I truly understand that, and I'm not trying to, you know, sound insensitive about this, because I truly do feel that there's a lot of need. And the issue that we run into, Fresno, is that if we're closing other cities and they're saying, well, Selma is being funded and they're going to continue. So what we're saying is that it's okay to bring everybody else here to Selma. The problem we're running into is that the citizens of Selma have a hard time with that. They're having, not only the citizens, but business owners, because we get the complaints from the business owners saying that they make a mess right behind McCoy's restaurant, or the 76 Chevron gas station, that they're, you know, prostitution going on over there. I mean, we continue to get complaints from Walgreens that they break into their windows. They've broken it 3 times now. Panda Express, same thing. You know, they're making a mess at their, they're always going through their garbage. I mean, again, I'm not trying to sound insensitive, and I get it. I'm all for helping our citizens that are Selma residents, but people that are coming from other cities, that's what we have a problem with. And
so, do you know if they're coming? So there are homeless that are unhoused, and then there are homeless that were sheltering. So before we came in and put the services at the Super 8, you had homeless that were unhoused. So you had homeless on your street. You had a census already. If you look at the hit count that was conducted in 2019, Selma had a significant number of folks that were homeless. So having now the ability to shelter some people, as I mentioned, those are primarily, vast majority of those folks are Selma people. Those were people that you already had here. And we have some long-term people that have been in there since we started the shelter in May. And so there, I know, I'm not going to say 100%, because I know of 1 or 2 that did come in from an outlying area that we brought in to the Selma shelter because there was space available. And farther to Selma is closer than farther to Fresno. So if you didn't have these 30 beds here, I mean, are you thinking that you would not have an issue with homeless people and breaking into or making a mess at different places?
Well, I know back in, it was between September and October where we did do a report in regards to our crime. And the majority of all the crime was conducted by individuals that did not live in our city, that were staying at the Super 8 and were from the surrounding cities. And that was on the news. I mean, we had reports that were given to us by our chief and the city. So, I mean, they're facts. These are true facts. And again, like I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to be insensitive. I understand that we do need to help these individuals. But I guess my argument will be, and it will always be, is every city needs to do their part. We, Selma, are doing our part. Every other city has to do their part. And I think that's the only way we will be able to attack this problem. It cannot just fall on one city just because they're saying, oh, we'll fund Selma. It's not fair to our citizens, and it's not fair to our business owners, who are the taxpayers here.
You know, there was a story yesterday on the Fresno Bee in the Sunday edition, the front page, and it had the main topic was homelessness and what's going to happen to these homeless encampments. What's going to happen to the folks who are on 41 right now? You know, Caltrans and Fresno City and PD are cleaning up these homeless encampments. And, you know, the first line was someone, you know, they had been told they'd been given 3 days notice, they had to clear out. And someone heard, hey, you got to come out, got to go now. And the voice was Mayor Jerry Dyer. He was out there personally, you know, on point. And it wasn't, hey, get out of here, we don't want to see you, you know, hit the, we'll give you a ride to Selma, like so many have said in the past and told us. It was, let's find you transitional housing. Let's find you someplace to go. Let's find a solution now. I think that's where we are, Laura. I think, you know, we've had 80, 75, 80 people in Selma, and, you know, the Super 8, there have been problems, but nowhere near the problems of the folks who have been camping on the sidewalks, in the bushes, by the tracks, in that triangle. So dangerous, you know, and people illegally camping here in Selma pose crime problems, they pose hygiene problems, they pose safety, serious safety problems. And I think what I'm hearing around the community is, what are we going to do? You know, when this contract ends with the Super 8 and we've got 80 folks who are here in Selma now, if they don't have that handshake, that contract to go somewhere else, and they end up on the Selma streets, we're back to square one. And that is an untenable situation for both the city and for the unfortunate folks that are there. Schaefer Park, we've had a number of fires this year. You know, that is not a sustainable situation. And you know, having you here tonight, it sounds good, you know, that the Pavarello House has 2 rural navigators. But as I read more in that article, I saw that the city of Fresno had purchased, I don't know if it was the city or the county, Sonia, maybe you can help us with this, 4 motels. And so the majority of those folks from 41 were relocated and were transitioned to those hotels. My question is, and that's like 160 rooms. My question is, can Selma avail itself of some of those rooms with some of the folks who are going to be transitioned out of this rapid rehousing, you know, this 1 year long temporary COVID situation at the Super 8? You know, what are our resources in Selma that we can draw on?
So there's 2 pieces here. This is Sonia Dolores with the County of Fresno, County Administrative Office. And Caltrans and CHP partnered with the city of Fresno to address those embankments where homeless have migrated to. Fortunately, Caltrans was unable to clear some of those encampments in the last almost a year now due to COVID and direction that they received directly from the state, that they were not to remove anybody that was residing in those embankments unless they were in danger, and that's imminent danger, meaning they were at risk of being hit by a car or otherwise. There were certain areas where all they could do is really just move individuals to safer locations within their jurisdiction. And now they've been given the go-ahead to address certain embankments, which is where we're seeing this influx of people being asked to come off of the embankments. Now, as of last week, 42 individuals had agreed to come into the home key rooms, which are the rooms that you're referring to. The Fresno Housing Authority did acquire 4 hotels in the city of Fresno and purchased a 5th one using CARES funding. In addition, they also purchased a hotel in the city of Huron. It's a smaller hotel, is my understanding. I don't have the specifics for that site, but there's various rooms, of course, attached to each of those hotels. One of the hotels will be for families. 2 of them, I believe, are for singles and couples. And so those units have been made available through partnership with the city of Fresno for Caltrans through our outreach team to bring individuals in. And that is effective now. They've been bringing people in. My understanding is they brought over 64 people in just within the last few days. One of the issues that we've seen now, you know, to add to the home key piece, the County of Fresno did acquire a hotel on Blackstone and Dakota. And that hotel is going to function as rapid rehousing, which means that individuals that occupy that site are actually signing leases to live there. And the hope is that all of these home key sites will eventually transition into affordable housing in the future. But for now, they'll be used to house individuals that are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Now, one of the things that we have found with our rural communities, and when we came out to your rural community and met with your city manager in 2019, and also your chief of police, was that there were people that, quite frankly, did not want to leave your community. They were from your community and didn't want to leave to be housed in the city of Fresno, which was one of the things that we were encountering in almost every rural community that we went to, they were either farm workers that lived in the city or unsheltered but still had jobs, or they were individuals that lived in the city and, you know, for one reason or another were unable to pay for housing. So that was one of the things that we discussed, is that we needed to find a way to perhaps have regional housing available in the various communities. And when we worked on putting together the priorities to address homelessness in our entire county, which we adopted in June of 2019, and I believe your city council did as well, either in June or July of 2019, those were some of the things that we had brought up as part of the jurisdictional issues that we were having, where they may be in your city, but they overlap with the county of Fresno. How were we going to address those that were within Caltrans jurisdiction and perhaps a railroad and also county property, but across the street was the city of Selma? How were we going to do that to ensure that we weren't just pushing them from one side to another? And the way we've started to address that was by sending our outreach team out into your communities. And Kingsview is part of the outreach team that comes into your city quite a bit to try to house individuals, to offer them housing wherever a bed may be available. But like I said, one of the drawbacks is that a lot of people want to stay in the community from which they're from. And that is why they decline housing. But that does not stop the outreach team from offering services on site. Some of the folks may need to go into treatment. Some of the folks may need to be reconnected with family. And that's part of what Laura's team does also. To contracts, they're offering diversion services, which may just be a matter of reconciling people back to their family, and then, you know, being able to go back home essentially and address whatever the issue was that resulted in their homelessness. But we are actively working with not just the city of Fresno, but all of our communities to try to see where we could place individuals. Now, the Blackstone and Dakota site is rapid rehousing. Again, folks would have to sign a lease to be able to live at that location. And the outreach team and the different navigators are aware of the different housing opportunities that are available. And it really is just a matter of matching the individual to the type of housing that is available and having that individual accept housing. One of the things that we found is by having the outreach team out in the community, there's a stronger likelihood that they're going to take us up on services. And so we work now with the railroads to ensure that we send outreach team out there. So working with your city and, you know, the work that's being done at Selma Com, those individuals may have that same opportunity to be housed at a location in Fresno, perhaps, but it really is a matter of them choosing to leave from the community that they're from. And a lot of them are just not willing to do that.
Mayor, you mentioned, you said if Selma would be able to avail itself, were you speaking specifically about a Project Home Key site, or what did you mean by that?
What I'm talking about is a more intermediate form of housing after what we have at the Super 8 right now, something that might offer something on a regional basis, some sort of regional housing. And the only examples I've seen of that are in Fresno so far. So I just wanted to ask Sonia if there was the ability for Selma to send folks who are willing to go to those places under home key that's changed from room key to home key when they're
to send folks experiencing homelessness in Selma to Fresno.
Correct. That's what I was asking, if that opportunity exists for those who would be interested in being sheltered, in having a place to live with a roof, with four walls, with some sense of permanency, rather than on the streets. Because, you know, the danger is we've got 75, 80 people, you know, 85 souls who are at the Super 8 who are not going to have a place to go in June. And what do? You know, not all of them. I think Councilmember Guerra is right on. A lot of them aren't from Selma and will be willing to go somewhere else. But you know, there are going to be some that do want to stay in Selma. And I think now is the time to get started looking for a solution for that in Selma or nearby. And if you could help us with that, that would be very helpful. Because we don't get any money for homelessness. We just don't get it. We don't get funded.
Yes, and I think that's part of the housing transitions that Laura's team is already working on, trying to match individuals to units that are available. And so as part of the COVID, so the beds that were added in Selma were part of our COVID response. In total, we had almost 450 beds that we added. The majority of them are in the city of Fresno. And when we looked at the possibility of these beds coming offline, the team actually looked at ways to house individuals to more permanent, more stable housing by trying to match them to different programs. So the COVID beds were brought on as emergency beds, but then the step up from these COVID beds are the triage and bridge beds that are available. There's not very many of them, but that's basically the step away from the COVID beds. These triage and bridge beds are only available in the city of Fresno right now. Okay. And as part of Home Key, the city of Fresno is actually making, they're going to be triage beds that they're adding, and then also rapid rehousing beds. So I think as part of the recap from this 100-day challenge that just ended last week or a couple weeks ago, there were the number of households that were identified within this 400 plus beds were about 383 households. So when they're looking at that number, these are all households to potentially be matched to beds that may be available. And like you said, it's very possible the only place we're going to have a bed for you is going to be, or a room for you is going to be in Fresno. Will you be willing to move? You know, even with our outreach team, as they were going out in the community, sometimes the only beds that we had available were in the city of Fresno, and they were transporting them. Some of the individuals that were probably, that were homeless and had no place to go after they had tested positive were actually coming into our isolation beds within the city of Fresno. The isolation beds that we have, we centralized them in the city of Fresno because we actually partnered with the hospitals to ensure that there was a warm handoff if they had somebody coming from the hospital that had tested positive and had nowhere to shelter in place. And that's the reason why we put those beds here in Fresno. And I could assure you that some of those beds were occupied by individuals from smaller communities, quite frankly, because they were exiting the hospital here and were able to shelter in place for the quarantine period or until they felt better. So there is some of that already going on through our outreach team. And that might be helpful, you know, maybe for you to learn more about, for us to share with you the options that are available, because the team goes out there and offers beds wherever they might be. It's up to the individual to decide whether or not they are going to go to Fresno.
So I have a question. How were you guys, or were you guys able to perform PIT this year with the whole COVID? Because usually it's done right around late January, right? Were you guys able to perform that?
Laura, if you want to answer that.
So no, a waiver, HUD offered waivers to communities to not conduct the street count. We still have to conduct a shelter count, okay. But the County of Fresno, Madera, Continuum of Care did receive a waiver. So we're not doing a PIT count this year.
Okay. And so with this,
tell us what a PIT count is, council member.
Sorry, it's point in time. It's basically a team goes out, and I commend you guys. I've always wanted to do it. I just never was able to do it. Is that they actually go out in the middle of the night. It's a huge team. It takes a huge community to go out and actually count all the homeless individuals that are out in the street, and they're assessing them to see what their needs are. And then that's how they put them on this, there's a vulnerability index number, I believe you guys still use, right? And so depending on how low the number is, that's the likelihood of them not making it out in the streets. If there's, you know, a certain number, then if they rate at a certain number, then their chances of dying on the street are higher. And so those are the ones that they need to hurry up and get into some type of housing to not have them die on the street. and they do an amazing job. It's a really, I've always wanted to do it. I just have never been able to. The timing was never, something was always going on. You know, because I do, you know, work for the Housing Authority, and so we're always having different projects, and so it's you know, it's nice to hand those keys to somebody that has never been in, you know, hasn't had a house. And so, I mean, one time I could tell you stories, but one time there was this one individual that was actually living in a cave in Fresno, and I handed the keys, and it was like just emotional. So, you know, I commend you guys for doing the work that you do. But yeah, so I was just curious as to, you know, as far as how you guys were able to do that with COVID, you know, do the point in time counts to figure out who was out there, who needed what services, you know, and then placing them. So
that's it takes about 200 volunteers a year to do that. It's done over a 3-day period, but there is one night that is selected, and HUD gives us the rules as far as what we can count and what time you go. And so it has to start at like 11 p.m. at midnight. You have to see people to actually count them. And then the second night is where folks go out and they do the assessments. And so they try to get more information on people. And eventually those names end up on a by name list, which is how we work people through the system. And then the third day is done during the day, again, trying to provide some assessments. But
Great,
no,
thanks.
It was a waiver
Thank you for that.
year, so it won't happen again until 2022.
Council member, was that it? Okay. With that, we'll go to the folks who have been patiently waiting on the phone to ask questions. City Clerk, do we have any oral communications? Any callers who would like to speak?
Hi, callers on the line. As a reminder, please use *9 to raise your hand if you'd like to provide any comment for the City Council. Mayor Robertson, I see no hands at this time going up.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is a presentation, informational presentation, and I want to say thank you to both of you for coming. And I really hope, you know, the City of Fresno has a massive budget, and the county has a huge budget as well, you know, equal to the City of Fresno. And we're really hopeful and happy that you came, both of you, Teresa and Sonia. Thank you. And Sonia, hopefully we can work with you, you know, in our city as we do get closer to that June 30th date, that critical time, that we can work together to find the next step of housing, you know, for these folks that are here right now at the Super 8, and that should start now, so that we're ready and we're not scrambling, even though there's so many things to do.
So Mayor, let me assure you that we are not going to exit people on June 30th to homelessness. That's not the intent. That's the reason that we have added the case manager positions. It's a reason that the community is engaged in the 100-day challenge to rehouse people. And so there is an absolute intent to work with folks to rehouse them to the location that they choose. If they choose to stay in Selma, then we will try to help them find a place to land that is permanent. If they are willing to come into our Project Home Key in Fresno, the one that the county is a part of, because I'm not sure that the city wants to house county residents. But for sure, the Project Home Key that the county is in partnership with, we are offering that right now. We're not waiting until June 30th. And so the intent was that the case managers were added, that they're starting to work with those folks right now, and that we will get them into something permanent. And as we get closer to the end date, as I mentioned, we're going to be stopping filling the beds, because we don't want to leave anybody on June 30th without an option. So that is happening right now as we speak. We're not waiting for June 30th. So
and I think that's great news. And I also think that maybe during this time, you could maybe be bringing local, more grassroots organizations up. I know WestCare, that's a very large organization that has taken over the administration of the Super 8 housing, but maybe the county could help an organization like Selma Community Outreach Ministries that kind of got into a massive program, and it sounds like it was a little bit too much for them to start with. But I know the director, Delphina's heart is in the right place. She's, you know, she wants to help the homeless, doesn't quite have the infrastructure or the technical expertise at this point, but maybe there are programs out there that the county could help organizations like Delphina's with to, you know, become more professional and to be able to handle a contract on the scale that they had, you know, that they started with when the COVID outbreak started, to help them along, to train them.
And I agree with you. I think that as we go forward, as we work with your communities, there's probably going to be more individuals that are going to be interested in providing assistance. And we've seen it again. We looked at Huron as a potential site because we were looking for a place on the west side. And I'm glad that Housing Authority was able to get a location in that city, because we do need something on the west side as well. But I think going forward, what's helped quite a bit is the communication. It's unfortunate that COVID happened, but right before COVID began, we did have pretty good communications with the various cities. And I think eventually, once this, you know, COVID, you know, kind of get a handle on COVID, I think that needs to happen again, so that we have the priorities up to date and that we're, you know, targeting those things that benefit your communities. I know our county administrative officer, Jean Rousseau, is very interested in ensuring that we're providing the best assistance to our cities, and understand that although you're not in the metro area, the population that you have there is very important as well. And your needs are very different than what we have in the metro area. And so sometimes it has to be just look a little bit different in order to work in your community. But we did start off with the outreach team making contact with your chiefs of police to get a better idea of the type of population that you have and the types of services that they would need, which are a little bit different than what we have in the city of Fresno. So although we may be able to house some individuals within the city of Fresno at our County of Fresno location, it would also be helpful to know that we could possibly transition people within your community as well.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If council has no other input, nobody from the public, will move on to our second presentation tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you to our guests, appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Take care.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to quarterly priorities presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a little background. This is a quarterly report that we give on the city council's priorities. Annually, we do a workshop before we start working on the budget with the city council. We'll do a workshop to go over the city council's priorities. 2 years ago, we did one. Dr. Ryle came in and we had an interactive where everybody's ideas and goals were put up on a board and grouped into categories that became priority areas, and then there were goals under them. And last year, because of COVID, Dr. Ryle didn't come in, but we consolidated those priorities and affirmed them. And so this is our quarterly update. And as we move forward, we will be doing a budget workshop, a council priority session with this new council before we start our budget process. So we're looking to have that workshop sometime in March. But this update is one of the quarterly update on last year's affirmation of goals and priorities. So this is for the quarter of October through December of this last year. And next slide, please. The priorities that the council established or reaffirmed were public safety and economic development, and our community culture and community development were also priority areas that were merged into the economic development area. And we did that in May. Next slide, please. So in public safety, one of the goals has been, well, initially it was to increase staffing. And then this last year with COVID and the budget, and the downturn in the economy, the goal was to keep our MOU commitments to our staff to avoid furloughs and or layoffs. The police department did a reorg and held vacant positions unfilled in order to help us meet our budget gap of $1.1 million deficit. Thankfully, we have gotten halfway through the fiscal year and things were looking better than we anticipated. So we were able to add one officer position back very recently. The council approved that. And we were able to fill a sergeant position. We also have some others that happened since then, but this is for October through December. A sergeant position was filled with a promotion, and 3 officer positions were also filled by promotion, promoting non-paid reserve officers. The fire department also filled 3 engineering positions by promotions. That's an update on your priorities in public safety regarding staffing. The next priority area that you have for us is economic and community development merged. One of the things that the goals in that area is to do project tracking. And we have established a monthly reporting that we do to the city council on our planning projects. And Kira will be giving that report to you again later this month. It includes things like Chicken Shack, the grand opening that we had during this time period, Dutch Brothers submitting their application, Ross is coming in, got their building permits, Wingstop. So those updates will be coming to you on a monthly basis. Also in this last quarter, we completed the development agreements for the Hampton Inn Hotel and the Caliber Collision used auto sales development as well. We have in here, we do a project lead tracking that we normally have in there. Right now I have last quarter's. We will get you the updated one just as soon as we can. Staff is out right now in order to provide those numbers, but as soon as we can, we'll send that to you probably next week. So you have the number of leads that we've responded to in this past quarter and the retention efforts and the number of people we've talked to about potential projects. Also during this quarter, we had the grand opening of the Central Valley Job Training Center. Very exciting, and you were all recently at the graduation just last week of the first class. This last quarter, we had CARES Act funding. We were very, very busy with CARES Act funding. Our economic development analyst created the grant program at your direction and issued the first round of grants and working on now the second one with your direction from the last meeting. And she also implemented a local gift card program and gave you a report on that as well. We also received notice that our project for CDBG COVID funding of $126,772 was awarded to allow us to do a senior meal program using local restaurants. So that will assist us continue to provide senior meals and hopefully help our local businesses in the process. The Community Development Director position. Good news. Today we received word and I am very pleased to announce that Fernando Santillan is appointed our new Community Development Director. Fernando comes to us from the city of Avenal, where he has been the Community and Development Director for the last six or so years. And he, prior to that, was with the Fresno EDC and the city of Fresno. He's going to be a great asset to our team and help us move our priorities forward. So he'll be joining us. His first day will be on February 17th. And I believe he'll be able to join us for the meeting on the 16th to say hello. And we'll get a press release out tomorrow. So this just all came together right before this meeting, and I'm very excited about it.
Long time coming.
and you're going to be so impressed with him. He's just really going to be a great fit for our community. All right, next slide. In the area of improving our procedures and streamlining them, you're aware we were awarded the SB2 funding to update our zoning ordinance. We issued a request for proposals. So that'll be one of Fernando's first projects, is to go through those proposals and bring you an award to get that process started. We also were awarded LEAP grant funds to assist in funding a new permit processing software. We're looking for the additional funding to be identified. We initially had hoped to use some of the CARES Act funding that alleviated our general fund, but we'll be bringing forward some other options and looking at those. The municipal code, we updated that with allowances for businesses selling used goods in this last quarter. And in other words, consignment, antique stores, thrift shops, we made that more business friendly. We also did a resolution adopting and allowing a one-year extension of specific planning entitlements because of COVID. So businesses that had come through and received planning entitlements in 2019, 2020, and maybe were slowed down because of COVID, we have given them an extension of 1 year to do their projects. One of your other goals is to research STEM sales tax leakage. We do continue to work with HDL on our quarterly sales tax revenue reporting and look for areas where we may have sales tax leakage and identify that and get that properly reported, as well as look for areas where we should be recruiting for business that's going elsewhere. We also work with the EDC on responding to leads and developing materials to promote Selma. Another priority or goal is to develop ways to educate our businesses and increase sales tax revenue. We are working with the USDA Rural Development Block Grant for our Downtown Business Improvement District. I believe Tracy has that RFP about ready to go out, so we can bring a consultant on to help us with that feasibility study. She has also worked on updating Selma.com and continue to keep that updated, get information out about COVID resources. She does a bi-weekly email to the business community, keeping them updated, and several press releases and getting information out, as well as fielding numerous calls and business visitations to help our business community changing times from stay-at-home orders to purple tiers to red tiers. There's been a lot for everybody to navigate. So we're trying to help our community through that. Slide, please. Another goal area is to update the speakers for downtown, create an atmosphere in downtown with lights and music. And the lights for the 2nd Street are moving forward. Our Public Works Director let us know that he anticipates installing those this month. The Community Development Block Grant project for the downtown sidewalks to be repaired and the ADA improvements. Engineering completed a survey and plans are being prepared to submit to the county for approval this month for that project. Our circuit planner, as you know, we were funded for another cycle to work on the downtown overlay with the circuit planner from FCOG, and interview questions and materials were prepared, and businesses and property owners have been interviewed, and there will be an online survey. Also, the agreement with the American Legion regarding the Veterans Plaza, Lincoln Plaza beautification was approved by the City Council, and renovation work is underway. Another goal under this priority area of economic and community development is to review our policies and our codes. We combined organizational assessment and customer service into this area. So in this quarter, we developed and implemented the COVID prevention plan, and each department is receiving training as we roll that out. It's an additional step in what we've been doing for the last year that complies with the newest OSHA regulations as far as documenting and reporting COVID cases or potential exposure. So that is being done. Thank you, Chief Peterson, for spearheading that. We've also updated and revamped our city personnel policies. We have a draft complete and under review so that we can get those adopted in the near future. Website development, our new website development is underway. Staff did their training so that we can have staff update that once it's rolled out. And our COVID response does continue with senior services. They provided 9,415 meals in this quarter, 650 household grocery deliveries, 120 Selma Cares boxes, 350 Thanksgiving meals with the Lions Club, and 300 Adopt a Senior gift bags. Also, with our COVID response, Supervisor Mendez chose Selma as a regional host for distribution of masks and hand sanitizers. So we have been busy making sure that businesses in the region, if they need resources of PPE, that they can get that here. We were also selected as an OptumServe test site, which was established at Pioneer Village, and other testing events were also coordinated in this quarter, many of them with the county, with Selma Unified School District, and United Healthcare. One of the other goals under this priority is council identified the freeway exits are our welcome mats to our city and to keep them blight free. So in this last quarter, you'll recall that we have had a number of public hearings on the nuisance abatement of freeway visible signs on properties near the freeway. So that is still underway. Public Works, Code Enforcement, and the Police Department do continue to work with Caltrans. And in this past quarter, they were successful in getting a cleanup done with Union Pacific Railroad for encampments that were along on railroad property. So that was a very big effort and made a big difference in our community. The council in the last quarter also approved a resolution of support for State Route 99 and the Mountain View Avenue interchange improvements, and Kingsburg also adopted a resolution of support. And that ties into the workshop we'll be having later this month on the northern end of the traffic circulation. One of your other goals or priorities is to maintain property values. Code enforcement has a big role in helping us in that regard. We had 144 code enforcement cases open during this quarter and 128 closed. We also invest in community improvement projects to maintain property values or increase property values. In the last quarter, we had the grand opening of the new police station. The Rockwell Park Grant Project Manager selection and recommendations went to council, and thank you for your support on approving that at the last special meeting we had. We also have had future fire station discussions in closed session with the City Council. And that's it for our quarterly report. If you have any questions or comments, we're all here to answer any questions.
Thanks for your report, City Manager. Does council have any questions for the City Manager at this time? If not, we'll bring this back to the public. Is there any oral communications? Are there any oral communications? Anyone on the line?
Hi, members of the public. As a reminder, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand if you have any comments for council. Mayor Robertson, there are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. With that, we will bring that back. That's an informational item, and we'll be having a budget / priorities workshop in the next month or two, I would imagine, correct? We did last year. Okay. Okay. With that, we'll bring it back. We've been at it since 6 hours and 20 minutes. We'll take a 5-minute break if everybody's okay, and we'll be back at 7:25.
Hi, Councilmember Mendoza Navarro. Do we have you back? Hi, Councilmember Mendoza Navarro. Do we have you back?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
With that, we're back in session after our brief break, and we'll move on to the consent calendar. All items listed on their consent calendar are considered routine. The complete consent calendar will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote. For purposes of discussion, any council member may have an item from the consent calendar taken off and put back on the regular agenda. The council will then vote on the majority of the consent calendar items remaining. Would anyone like to take off any items tonight on the consent calendar? Is there a motion to approve items A through C? Is there a second?
A second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guerra,
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza Navarro,
Yes.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cho,
Yes.
Mayor Robertson.
Yes. Okay, item D.
Okay, just on page 17 on the register. Second check number 7650, ANS Pump Services, tear down and rebuild pump for the amount of $6,987.93. Can you?
It's a storm drain pump rebuild.
Next page is a one on the Cloud Watts Inc. Check number 76628. For the amount of $6,850. What was that for?
They do our OPEB report. It's for our financial statements. It's for our OPEB analysis that has to be done for our financial statements.
Got a couple, page 18, 76627, Gregorio Lopez Carpentry custom built cabinets. It just doesn't say for what.
They were fire cabinets. Cabinets for one of the fire stations. That's correct.
Stations. Okay. And then page 20, the Cal card charges. The Captain Uresti, Home Depot, sprayer COVID-19. What's that?
I believe that was a portable sprayer for the ambulance crew to take with them. Before we had something at the station, so they could not decon the back of their ambulance until they got back. This was something a little more portable, allowed them to spray and decontaminate the back of their ambulance after each call.
Got it. Thank you. A little bit more down, the finance department, Cal City's registration, $250 for new mayors and council members academy. Did we have anybody sign up for that this year?
Have Councilmember Mendoza Navarro and Mayor Pro Tem Cho and Isaac Moreno.
And that will be virtual.
Yeah, it just passed actually. It was last week and the prior week.
You had it. Okay. And you.
It was all virtual.
All right. Hopefully we'll be hearing more about that. Was it worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very interesting. Organization. The way the format works, it was a little different, obviously, than a traditional kind of training, but they made it work. They made a lot of tools they can give to, and then also give you the presentations at a later date, so you can come back and reference to them. So it was interesting. It's different, obviously, with COVID, but it seemed to work.
Sounds good. Thank you. Anybody else have anything on the check register they'd like to inquire about? Okay. Yeah. Motion.
Motion.
I'll second that motion to approve item D. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guerra,
Yes.
Mayor Robertson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza Navarro,
Yes.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cho.
Yes.
Moving on to regular business items, no public hearing items tonight. Item 2, council request to discuss mayor's attendance to various boards on behalf of the city council.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this was a council request from Mr. Mayor about attending the Selma Unified School District Board, the Selma Cemetery District, and the Selma Healthcare District on behalf of the city council, and to invite the boards to a joint meeting. Since this was your council request, if you'd like to.
Thank you. So in order to kind of have a better understanding of all of the issues affecting our city holistically, I'm asking tonight for council consensus to attend these board meetings, Zoom in on these board meetings, and on behalf of the council, invite these boards to have a joint meeting hosted by the city. At this point, it would have to be a Zoom meeting, but maybe as we open up down the line, we could meet at the Arts Center. And again, this is to foster unity and understanding, and that understanding comes through knowledge of the various aspects of the city that these boards address. I know I've never been to a cemetery board meeting. I would be interested in, knowing more about what they do in the situation, especially with COVID, of that cemetery right now and the other pieces of land being considered. The school board has lots and lots of issues going on. Then many, or if not most of them, interact with the city in some way. And the healthcare district has been a special district that's really flown under the radar for years and years until about 2017, when it achieved a little higher profile because it started, aggressively giving out money and financing to small struggling nonprofits in our city. I'd like to learn more about them, and I would like council, with your permission, to go to these board meetings and request for us to have a meeting where we all get together and talk about what we do. Mayor Pro Tem Cho, do I have your consensus?
Yes, I would like also if maybe you let us know also if if we can make it, we can join you. Is that okay?
There's a Brown Act issue, so we could have one person.
Okay.
And we can decide on what other if you want to attend, Mayor Pro Tem Cho, if you want to attend with me, we could do that. Okay. If council says okay.
I say if I can, that's like I say, I am working still. But I would like to learn also,
it's problematic for me too, to get away to go to these board meetings too. So I've got to carve it out of my schedule. So maybe we could both carve it.
If you can't make it, maybe I can make it, kind of thing. So we'll figure it out. Okay.
Absolutely. Councilmember Trujillo, do you have your consensus?
I just want a little more information in regards to the representation part. Will you be going and, talking on behalf of our council, or is it just to go and request that we have meetings together and we can unite and start talking about the ongoing issues in the city, the town? So,
yeah, I think the answer is yes to all of that. Okay. Council Member Mendoza Navarro, do we have your consensus?
My name is a mouthful, right? It's really long. So I'd like to learn more about, the different boards as well. But I think it would be more of like maybe we can invite them to do a presentation like we did for the homeless. Maybe we can invite them so that way the whole community has an input and has knowledge of what they do. I don't mind, like maybe when Mayor Pro Tem is not available to join you, maybe I can join you, but I think it should be more of a, maybe they can do a workshop at one of our meetings so that way, we have a better understanding and the community has a better understanding as well, so that it's out to the public so that they know what they do as well.
My thought on that was just instead of a workshop, instead of them coming to us, we all get together on equal footing because no one's more important than anybody else. We should just kind of have a meeting where we all get together. And I saw this done many years ago when I got on council in 2012 and 2013. The Board of Supervisors had a meeting with several city councils. Mm-hmm. And it was a really big meeting and everybody was able to have their input, which was, it was valuable. It was good to hear some of those issues that were facing the county and the really big city of Fresno are also facing our city. And more importantly, hearing about strategies for dealing with those was really important. And during our, the council person Mendoza Navarro, you'll appreciate this because you were there. Mr. Vargas was telling us he met, when he was a superintendent of schools, he met with the city manager like what, every month, a couple times? And could you imagine having the council communicating with the boards like that, elected, representing the people? Could really open up some lines of communication. We've never done it before. What's there to lose?
I think that it's a great idea, but I really, I think maybe I'm still for maybe like more of a workshop for the whole community. And then that way we all hear it and then it's not any violation to the Brown Act. Cause I know maybe, somebody might have a different thought on, some of the information or because there are many areas that maybe we can do like a quarterly type of meeting, or maybe one person attends one meeting, another person attends another, and then that way we have like a rotation type of thing. Am I making myself clear?
Did you want to weigh in on it?
Just Mr. Mayor, members of council, also one other thing I wanted to share and just ask also if our city attorney could give us some advice on this is when there are joint board meetings, if that is the avenue that the council decides to go or another group decides to do that with us, there are notification requirements with joint board meetings that would have to be coordinated. So
yeah. That's correct. That's correct. And I think what the mayor is envisioning is a meeting with the three entities, and they'd all be at the table. And if there's a majority of all of them, that's great, because as long as there's a Brown Act notice and agenda, it'll work out. And as far as the format, maybe the initial meeting was where each entity presents its top 3 issues or ways that they'd like to work with the others. I mean, I'm sure the mayor has many more ideas.
Sounds good. Okay, Councilmember Guerra?
Okay with that.
You're good with that? Okay, I'm good with that. So by consensus of 3-2, I'm gonna go to visit along with the Mayor Pro Tem, these other boards, and we'll report back to the council on how we do. Thank you for that. Thank you, council. For that, we'll move on to the next item, which is a council request to discuss City CARES Act funding reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This was a council request from Councilmember Guerra, and it was to look at and for the council to have a discussion about the CARES Act reserves. These are the CARES Act funds that we received from the state. It was the initial allocation. The action that you all took at the last meeting was from the county fund. So this is going back to the state funds. And there was a contingency amount that we set aside in that council action of $91,715. It was budget contingency in case there were any concerns with the budget. We didn't know how the fiscal year budget was going to unfold. And so that was set aside as a contingency. So this item, again, Councilmember Guerra, this was your request if you'd like to.
Yeah, I would like to, I thank you for confirming the amount and the clarification that it is from the state. The original CARES Act money that we did receive the first go around. And what I'm thinking of doing is if it passes or we have consensus, to allocate relief money to the businesses that are still struggling if we don't have enough monies in the CARES Act, because I'd like to get a report from Tracy as to how many businesses have applied for the second round and has anybody been denied. So if we have, then we can allocate some of that money to the businesses, and then also bring back the software that for the
permits.
The software
Permit processing.
and then bring back the speakers for the downtown speakers.
Okay, so
there's money's left over.
So you'd like to get an update on the second round of funding,
Yes.
and then consider using the 91,000 to assist with any business relief grant funds, the permit processing software, and the speakers.
Does council have any input on this?
Is this a discussion or what is this?
This is a discussion item.
Okay, I thought we were going to go with a consensus. So I'm okay with the staff report coming back to us on the second round of funding, when it actually started, what the requirements are, how they were funded, and the outcome of what was the first round, and how you're going to go ahead and give the second round. So yes, I would like more information.
I'm good with that. I'm good with seeing how the funding is going, and then seeing how the remainder of the funds might be used for business relief, as well as permit software and downtown enhancement. All right. If no one else has any items, do we have any callers on the line who wanted to weigh in on this topic?
I see we have a couple of callers. As a reminder, if you have any comments for council, please use *9 to raise your hand, or simply if you are on the app, please press the raise hand button to raise your virtual hand if you have comments for council. Mayor Robertson, no hands are going up, so we have no comments.
We'll move on with that to item 4, discussion and direction regarding energy efficacy capital improvement project.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The item we have before you is one that we discussed in the prior years. It is an energy efficiency project. It consists of LED lighting for building improvements, solar panels, different items and structures that would allow us to reduce our footprint as far as our dependency on PG&E and go to a more green format as far as either solar or longer lasting charging stations for our vehicles that we may have, or again, just some LED lighting within the building to kind of get them up to a more core low efficiency program. Just as far as a rubric of what we've done in the past with this project. So in September 4, 2018, council authorized an agreement between ENGIE to really just do an energy assessment program to kind of go through. They went through all our buildings. They looked at our available property to see where they can make some improvements to help us assist as far as our PG&E and what that footprint looks like. Through that assessment, they identified different facilities where they could do LED improvements. They also identified multiple locations where they can put solar arrays, one of them being here at City Hall, across the street at the Fire Admin Building, Brettlinger Park, and I think Schaefer Park as well was identified. Those solar arrays would feed, whether it be some of our pumps that have a lot high capacity as far as an energy, or maybe the buildings themselves. So to move forward, we came into that program and that assessment. ENGIE proposed a total cost factor of 1.5 million to get that done. Moving forward even more, the finance department released an RFP to be able to assess what our financing mechanism would be, and what that interest rate would look like and how that payment structure would be consolidated. So that was done actually in April 27th of 2020. In June 15th of 2020, council directed staff to actually start looking at a different program as far as a loan mechanism. And that was from the California Energy Commission. This is a low interest rate program with an interest rate of 1%. So council did receive that information, and we further discussed that and what that program would look like. There was some pros and cons, obviously, different financing mechanisms, the way they were structured through a more traditional interest rate, which we received a quote at that time of 2.95 over the term of 20 years versus the CEC program of 16 years at a 1% interest rate. The biggest mechanism or things that stood out between that assessment is one, obviously with a low interest rate of 1% and also a shorter term, it does increase your payment, but it does reduce your actual liability because you're paying less interest. The con to that format was you actually had to have some upfront costs where the city would have to put into out-of-pocket costs to offset that. Instead of using savings, you'd actually had to come, a contribution would come from the general fund to maintain that obligation for the first couple of years until it actually caught up. So again, moving forward, it was then decided at that time to discuss it further. We brought it back at a different meeting. And again, we decided to bring it back at a later date within this month to be able to have a further discussion on that assessment. So some of the things that we discussed at that point were, how do we want to move forward with this project, right? Some of the things that came out was one, take it back out to RFP, just to kind of revamp again. NG did give us that assessment program. We do have the information. We are contractually allowed to use that information to put it out to bid if that's the direction that council wants to go, or we can actually put it off to a later date if council wants to discuss it again, or any other mechanism the council would like to do with this project. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to council for any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions of the assistant city manager?
I have some questions. I know the bid that we're looking at right now, it still does not include the police station. So that would be something that would have to also be revised. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what we could do is write that into the RFP process and say, look, we have a solar array. It's already been identified as far as the location, the number of arrays that can fit within that overall footprint. But what we'd ask is that to now assess our connectivity to our police station instead of City Hall.
The other question I have, and I know it's one of the meetings that we had, but Public Works Director mentioned some of the work that they've completed. So is there any way we can get a report as to all the work that Public Works has done? Then I'm okay with going out with for an FRP and bringing back at least 4 bids.
So the work that Public Works did actually was assessed when we brought it back the last time. There was some more cleanup that will need to be done. So once that actually was executed or will be executed, we'll take a look at it one more time to make sure that we have a good overall format. And then we'll also write into that RFP to make sure that they reassess the buildings to make sure what is in the RFP is still true to what needs to be done today. Because Public Works, as you just said, is continuing to work to get us more efficient on their own as well.
Council? I would echo that of Councilmember Guerra. I think that it's time to go out and take a look at what's out there. At least 3 bids, 4 bids, and include the police station, and make sure that you have the input of all of the stakeholders in the city, including the Public Works Director, on what they've already accomplished. I would imagine we're about a year down the line almost from our last consideration. I'll bet technology's even improved since then in solar, and hopefully price has decreased. Technology, power up, price down. So let's hope that it's gone in that direction, but we could get some bids on that. So I would be fine with sending that RFP out as well.
Hey, Isaac, I have a question.
Yes.
Did we send out that check already for 25, or how much was it?
It was $20,000, and yes, they have been paid.
They have been paid. Okay.
And that allows the city to have some structure in terms of how it's going to structure the bid and what it's going to look for in terms of solar power. Is that correct?
It allows us to use the energy efficiency feasibility study they did for our RFP.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So it makes for a more informed bid.
Correct.
More efficient
The
bid.
more you can fine tune any kind of bid, the more you can reduce yourself from any liability or change order in the future.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
To do what?
Any questions?
So I do have one question before we make the motion. One of the other items that was discussed in the prior meeting, so I just want to make sure I get clarity, is the financing mechanism, right? There's the CEC program, which we're not guaranteed to get. It is a competitive process. Don't even know what available funds they have at this moment. I tried to leave a message, but didn't get a reply. So I just want to make sure that we get a motion on the financing mechanism as well that you want built into that RFP.
But wasn't that the major argument, that the city would go and get a lower percentage? That's why we went and walked away from Angie, because the city was thinking they would get a better percentage, and the risk was higher. And the risk was higher, but the city, the majority of the council still felt it would be in the best interest of the city, because the risk was higher, but the turnaround of the 2% or in some way, the percent was less. The payout from the beginning was higher and the risk was higher, but they felt they were going to earn more using another company or asking Angie to go and ask the state for a grant that would help us pay it.
Correct.
Yeah, so I recall that Angie didn't want to go through that process, finding that funding, which was considerably less. And as you say, the overall liability is less. It did result in a higher payment from the city and actual money out of pocket of the city, so to speak, the first couple of years. But as that payment caught up with the lower interest rate, it paid for itself, and it did. The value exceeded the liability of having to make those extra payments the first 2 years by having a lower out-of-pocket cost on that interest due to the lower interest rate. I think that
Isaac, I have a question.
So the CEC is, if it's still viable, why wouldn't we check into that? Why wouldn't we check into that source of funding? And at the same time, the providers, some of these providers have their own funding as well, that maybe they could pitch also. So in terms of looking for that, more is more, to find out what the best funding mechanism would be.
So the finance department can do, like we've done in the past, a financing rubric and give you the best method in which we propose for that. Obviously, if the direction is to go after that program, we will do so and try to work through that process and see what that tool looks like. And then we'll come back to some direction.
You said something earlier. Can you reiterate what you said in regards to that financing mechanism to the state?
Sure. So the program itself, one, again, it is a competitive process. Two, it's due on funds available. We do not know what they have available at this time. I will say that it's still on their website, but it will take some working through their process to get it done. So the difference between the two mechanisms, again, the way they format their structure in the CEC is a little bit different. They structure it to a shorter term and they do their own assessment on how they set up your financing structure. The difference between the Angie and that one was you had no out-of-pocket costs. So within the short term of the first couple of years, you will have a payment that's over and above what your initial savings are within your PG&E. So again, the way these programs work is you have a PG&E cost factor, you will reduce that factor, and that the funds being available that is being trued up or made available can be allocated to the obligation. So you will have that upfront cost factor within the first couple of years.
First 5 years.
For the first,
then after that,
you'll catch up to itself. Correct.
But in the long run, the city saves money because the interest is a lower cost.
So that's the way factor, right? You have a higher interest rate, but you have a stable payment that you're not having to come out of pocket for.
How it always works,
versus
right?
more
payment
interest.
Plan, more interest you pay, but the lower the payment.
But there is that word, if you do qualify, and if the state has that money available, correct?
That's correct, because it is a competitive process.
That's
and again, based off available funds.
Based on available funds.
We have a pretty good grant writer too, right? Townsend, that could look. Can they help with the CEC?
This application is more of a technical application. I have seen it. It's not very lengthy in essence. It's like a grant writer is really going to tell that story, right? This is more of a technical aspect, getting that data and putting it in there so they can.
Lobbyists couldn't help us with that either, Chris Com, or is this just more of a finance department function?
We can assess that. I wouldn't know if they could or couldn't. So
would it be truthful to say that it'd probably be good for us to probably send it back to you and maybe get a little more information, bring it back to council and we can discuss it more? Or is this where we're going to really need a consensus? Because I mean, we've been back and forth since the last council.
So let me ask the question, can we put this out with having the providers let us know what type of financing options they would recommend, and would they include or would they pursue on our behalf the CEC funding as well?
We can.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have consensus, council? Actually, let me bring it back. Do we have anybody on the line who would like to weigh in on solar for the city?
Hi, to the callers on the line, please use *9 to raise your hand, or for those using the app, please just raise your virtual hand to let us know if you have any comments for council at this time. Mayor Robertson, we have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Well, that will bring it back. Is there any further discussion, or is there a motion?
So I just want to make sure that I understand what I'd like to move forward, because I can tell you that solar really saves money, because you know, with all this COVID, we're at home. We actually got solar in our house right before COVID started. And my savings already this year has been almost $4,000. And that was just a rough figure. So the longer that we're waiting, the less money we're going to be saving. So we're not saving any money right now. So I'd like to know, because there was a couple of things that were happening. And I've kind of followed this process when I was watching the meetings before the elections. And I'd like to move forward with the RFP. I'd like to put in, write in the police station. And then I'd also, just if I heard it correctly, that we can write in that the vendors write in some type of what type of funding they can go for. So, I mean, I'd like to move forward with just getting somebody on board, and we need to have the solar in place. Or we need to get this project going.
Mayor Pro Tem Cho?
Yes, I agree with that one also.
Okay. And just one bid, or are we looking for 3 or 4 bids?
We can do 3.
Well, it's an open RFP process, so
okay.
As many proposals we receive is what we receive.
And how long are you planning on keeping, how long are you going to make the window?
I think short.
Yeah, standard 30 days at least for somebody to be able to put together a full proposal. 30 to 45 days is pretty much our norm.
And how do you know who to go to?
We just put it out. There's different construction sites we can put it out to. We'll just get the word of mouth as much as possible.
Okay.
And then Angie can apply as well, right? Anybody who's already applied can apply?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it sounds like we have consensus on this. Ready to move forward?
Yep.
All right, we clear? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5, review of proposed timeline and request for proposals for procurement of city general counsel legal services.
Members of council, at the specially held meeting on January 15th, the city council directed staff to begin creating a request for proposals for the procurement of city general counsel legal services. Attached, we have a draft RFP for those services. We also have outlined a timeline, a draft timeline to get the RFP out this Wednesday, that it would be due in 3 weeks, that we'd evaluate the following week the proposals and conduct interviews, and could be looking at entering a contract by April for legal services. So that's for your consideration. If you have any comments, edits to the RFP, or if you have any questions about the timeline, please let us know.
Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to council. Does anyone on council have any questions or any issues with the timeline for the requests for the RFPs for the city general counsel services?
I like it. I think we need to move on it, and I think it's a good time frame.
We have consensus.
Okay. Yes, I agree.
Okay. With that, we'll bring it back to the public. Does anyone on the line have any input tonight on the timeline and request for proposals for procurement of city general counsel legal services?
Hi, Mrs. Delgadillo. I do see that your hand is raised. You have 3 minutes to comment on this item.
Can you hear me, Reina?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Victoria Delgadillo. I am just thinking that when we hire employees, we're hiring an attorney, correct, for representation in our city. I think that it's vital for the background to be checked on any attorney that is hired. And when I say the background, I'm talking about criminal background, and I'm also talking about personal background of that person, because it's very easy to just hire in haste, and I don't want to see an attorney who does not have a good reputation and who is not solid in their firm or as an individual. And I would also like to say that it would be very helpful to look at the cases
Oh, we're not hearing anything, Vicki. We can't hear you.
Our association.
Now we can hear you.
And see, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. And check with the California Bar Association and just be very certain that we are hiring someone who has integrity and good character and will make good decisions for our city. And I really believe that our city has not been represented to the best interests of the community in the years that I have lived here in town. And I really believe that sometimes our attorney can do a good job.
We lost you again.
A lawsuit was filed against anybody in the community. And I'm saying this because I had to pay $38,000 in legal fees to protect my home and my neighborhood. And this is very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delgadillo. Do we have any other speakers who wish to give their input?
Mayor Robertson, I see no other hands raised.
Okay. With that, we'll bring it back to council. Is there a motion to approve the timeline and direct?
Motion to approve the timeline.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guerra?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza Navarro?
Yes.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cho?
Yes.
Mayor Robertson?
Yes. Okay, on to council. On to city reports. We'll start with our city manager.
Mayor, members of council. Another good news item to share with you all is today we received the project application for the Amberwood project, 270 single family residential homes.
Wow.
Sorry, how many?
Wow.
Very excited to receive that application so we can start.
Wow.
Working on that.
Can't hear you. We can't hear you very well. I can't hear you very well.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
Yes, a lot better. Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay. Mayor, council members, I'm very pleased to announce that today we received the project application for Amberwood, 270 single family residential units. It's an annexation project, but we're very excited to have the application that has been turned in so that we can start work on this important residential project for the city of Selma.
That's been a long time coming, I'll tell you. Yeah. And then what, do they have a timeline on when they might be breaking ground on this?
I don't have any additional, but we will be keeping you up to date as things progressed. It just came in today. So we'll be working very closely with them and keeping you informed as we go.
That's good news, along with the new community development director news too.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. Assistant City Manager Moreno.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. As of this point, I'd actually like to give you my quarterly financial budget update. Give me 1 second and we'll keep going here. Okay, so again, this is going to be my second quarter budget update for the fiscal year of 2021. Throughout this process, what we'll do is we'll look at the general fund. We'll also look at Measure S and some of our enterprise funds. We'll look what goes into these budgets and we'll compare budget to versus actual. We'll also look at some of the key factors that are impacting our revenue streams as well as our expenditures. We'll do that for the general fund, Measure S, as well as all the other funds that I just mentioned. So to start the process, we'll look at the general fund. So in the general fund, we have a total budget of $14.7 million. That does include the amended budget that to increase for one officer for PD. So that is our updated number. So as a benchmark, we look at what that would be at a 50% marker. That would be $7.4 million. And again, that does include the impact for the amended budget that we had recently for the additional officer. So for the budget process and doing an analysis, we have to look at our revenue streams and how they actually fall into place, whether it be sales tax that comes on a monthly basis or our property tax that actually comes in for a first permanent payment in December. So some of these actual numbers are actually projected and estimated. Some will be taxes like franchise fees. Some are professional services, for example, legal fees that we haven't received a bill yet for. So there is some assessment and analysis that goes into this process. So for the first 2 quarters, we have a budget marker of $7.3 million. Our actual revenue stream that we received to date would be about estimated at 8.7. So that gives us a variance of 1.4. So that you can see that our total estimated revenues received so far to date is 60%. So you can see that's a very large factor, and we'll discuss that a little bit as I go through the details. So again, in Department 0000, what is built into that? What you have is your sales tax, property tax, a large mechanism of overall funding sources for the general fund. That department itself brings in 86% of our total revenues for the general fund itself, by itself. And as you're well aware, our sales tax basis is really what enhances our overall general fund. So that is a big marker. And what you can see as far as the estimates we received to date, we're actually above our previously estimated budget amount of $1.3 million. So you can see that we're actually above 60%, but a large factor of that is because of our sales tax increase that we initially projected is coming in well over our initial benchmarks. Another factor, contributing factor, is also going to be the engineering department. Their revenue stream for that department, although it's not as grand as that Department 000, is at 236%. This factor is also because Vineyard Estates, they have actually prepaid for their building permits. So the impacts of that, as well as the impacts for the improvement plans that they have to review and the inspections they have to do, contributed to that marker. Now looking at our expenditures. Please stop me at any time if you have any questions. So our expenditures, we have a benchmark of budget of 7.3, our actuals of $7.0 million, a variance of 331,000. That brings us under our halfway point of 48%. So again, revenue streams higher, expenditures coming in slightly lower. Some of the key factors that are impacting this number are going to be our human resources department at a marker of expenditures being utilized already of 93%, as well as our city attorney at 63%. So that brings our gain of 1.7 as of the halfway marker for this fiscal year. Are there any questions regarding the general fund?
Could you email this to all the council members?
As soon as I'll do it first thing tomorrow morning, correct?
We did anticipate that there would be additional costs with human resources and given some of the things we've been working through. So
correct. And this is something we've been discussing throughout the period.
Legal actions in the human resource area.
So these are all matters that council is well aware of. Any other questions on the general fund before I move forward? Okay. The next one we'll look at is Measure S. Again, Measure S is an impact as far as sales tax basis and what is occurring. So if one is happening in the general fund, you're seeing that impact of increases, you will see that not equally, but you will see an increase in Measure S as well. Because remember, only residents going to get charged that half cent. So it's not a one-to-one basis. So budgeted amount that we have projected for this up to this point will be $825,000. We actually receive 1.1 million with a variance of $295,000. And again, just an overall basis of sales tax being projected lower and receiving more. We've received an estimated of a little over $300,000 extra dollars within sales tax over what was projected. So you can see that marker really coming in here. Our budgeted expenditures, $810,000. Again, expenditures coming in slightly under $805,000 with a variance of $4,500, giving you a net overall position gain of $315,000. So again, sales tax coming in strong, a lot stronger than we initially projected.
What's the fund balance right now?
I did not bring that number with me. I can kick that out to you tomorrow though, so you have that information.
When we get these reports, they'll be actual, not projections.
The presentation I give you?
No,
yeah,
the one you're gonna actually send to us.
You'll get the same presentation that I'm giving here today.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So we'll now go into our ambulance fund, which is one of our enterprise funds. So you can see here from our projected budget, we estimated 2.7 million. Actual received is 2.4 with a variance of 288,000. Again, IGT has not been transferred yet or received. So we're doing an estimate of what that 50% would look like to kind of give us a gauge of what our year looks like coming into it. Those transfers will be coming up here shortly. I think our first one comes out in March, and we're due to receive their funds back prior to the end of the fiscal. Okay. So budgeted for expenditures, you're looking at 2.5 as a budget marker for 50% again for half the year. Actuals at 2.4 with a variance of 182,000.
What's the driver on that? Why is it lower this year?
One of the key factors that I will say for this budget cycle, well, we did start a new ambulance, as you're well aware of. One of the indicators that we had was really how is that income driving in. By doing an assessment, we did find out that that new bus is actually not being sent to our billing service. So within this period, I want to say it was 600 and something trips that were unbilled. So they're now collecting that money, or we're starting to now see that money come in.
That was just a hiccup because the city took over the service.
It was a hiccup on the county communication end, not necessarily ours. So it was.
They didn't see those 600 trips because we were performing them, and they didn't report it to the billing service. Is that what happened?
Correct.
Right. It was based on it because it runs through the county. The way the program the software worked, each call runs through and then goes off to our billing company. It did take us a couple of months to realize this wasn't happening because it was difficult to evaluate our call volume and stuff, unfortunately, due to COVID. When we started in April, our call volume was quite low. So when we were monitoring the funding that was coming in, it did appear low, but we anticipated that was because of a reduced call volume. Because of that, once the call volume stabilized to where it was comparable to the year before, then we were able to kind of evaluate it and determine that it was lower than we had anticipated. Once we looked into that, we found the problem pretty quickly, and it's been since corrected.
That variance there is due, for the most part, to the billing issue.
Well, you had an increase in cost because you brought on additional services, but then your revenue stream to offset that cost is not all there. So you're having a little bit. Put it this way: if you collected the revenue stream that we projected, you see a lot higher gain here because you're incurring the cost, but you're not getting any of the benefit.
During COVID, the number of trips fell off, right? At the beginning of the tail,
from April, we started at April 1. From April until about mid-June, there was a pretty significant dip in call volume. just the stay-at-home order and such, it was seen kind of countywide. People weren't out, and people weren't calling the ambulance for various reasons. And once about mid-June into July, it started to pick back up again as people started to go out and go about their normal routines again. There will be a significant increase. I'm sorry. There will be a significant increase as we see these funds. I think we corrected it 2 or 3 months ago. And as they've reported to us in the past, it's anywhere from 3 to 6 months where we see the full impact of a call being billed.
So third quarter, we'll see a pickup in that. Okay.
It should project to pick up, correct. Again, you're taking on more costs, but you're not bringing in that offset. So if you tried to throw that revenue projected in, you'd see this a lot higher, most likely more of a couple $100,000 in a gain. But again, we fixed the matter. We will receive those revenues, and we can still collect it. So we're moving forward to get that number up. Okay. Our next enterprise fund would be the Pioneer Village. As you're well aware, they are taking an impact due to COVID. They have no events. The main driver within their revenue stream is events, right? Pioneer Village is actually prior to this every single weekend for some type of event, and that has now kind of squashed a large part of their revenue stream. So for the budget impact, we budgeted $22,000. Actual was only 14 in revenue streams with a variance of 7.4 or $7,400. Expenditure wise, we budgeted 31,000 with actuals of 29. Again, the impacts that we have for this facility, think of it similar to a restaurant, right? You still have your overhead costs, you still have your utility bills, you still have your water bills. All those expenditures are still there. You just, again, don't have that revenue to offset it. So you're going to see your expenditures stay kind of in line because you have those hard costs. You can eliminate some soft costs, but the majority of those expenditures are still going to be there. So you do see a net loss within this fund up to this point for $15,000.
Most of the costs are landscape maintenance and water.
Landscape maintenance itself is, we budget $30,000 in expenditures. We do a transfer to offset that expense to make sure that Public Works receives that offset for the labor. The next one we have is the transit fund. So we budgeted $566,000. Actual revenue stream coming in is 101. You'll always have fluctuation within that department of the revenue streams, depending on what your labor looks like. We did have some individuals out, so it reduces that overall, but it also reduces your costs. So you kind of have a one-on-one in that sense of the way. So your actual 101,000 with a variance of 64,000. The last 2 months have actually been estimated in to make sure we get a good estimate here. Budget expenditures, again, 566,000 with actuals at 465 with a variance of 101,000. Again, that expenditure number will vary depending on how much actual product they purchase, how many supplies are they using, how many tools or whatever they may be. That's all billed back, so the expenditure number will fluctuate in that sense of the way. So that gives them a positive gain up to this point of $36,000. And just to keep in mind too, that already backs out the transfer that is coming into the general fund. That is done on an annual basis or a monthly basis.
That was $300,000 this year.
That's correct. So those monies are actually being transferred monthly. So that is already projected within here. So if you put it back, you had an additional $150,000.
At this point.
Gotcha. To this point, correct. Cultural arts, again, same thing as your Pioneer Village. Very limited to what the capacity can do, but they still have all the overhead. Actual budget of revenue streams, 81,000, or budgeted revenues, 81,000 with actual 38, with a variance of 42,000. Expenditures, 98,000 with actual 51, with a variance of 46,000. And they are showing a net loss for this period for $12,000. So we are, again, monitoring the situation. I know Mike's actually looking for different grants, different ways to actually bring in revenue streams due to the COVID factor, doing a lot more virtual classes, things of that nature. So they are bringing some revenue stream in and trying to do the best they can to keep it afloat. That concludes my presentation. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Does council have any questions for the finance director?
Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you.
That will move on to our interim city attorney. Hilda, do you have anything to add at this point?
Just thank you for showing confidence in me, and I hope to be with you through the interim, and look forward to having you hire a new permanent city attorney. Anything, if you have any questions, you can email me or call me on my office or cell phone.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And many of you may recognize Ms. Montoy. She is the counsel for the SKF district as well. Okay, with that, we'll move on to community development. We'll be full here before long. We'll be getting a report from someone, but not this time. Public Works Director, Shane Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, real quick, I just want to recap on the energy efficiency CIP project. I'll sit down with Isaac. I have records of everything we've done thus far as retros go, all our facilities, buildings, parks, etc. And we'll reassess the assessment, if you will, and get it current before we go out to RFP on that. Just give you guys a little report from our storm we had last week. We got over 3 inches of rain, according to my rain gauge here at the city yard. We gave out between 300 and 400 sandbags to the citizens of Selma. We got sandbags made up and ready available for the citizens at the city yard for pickup. We did quite a bit of pre-storm preparations. We had plenty of time to, because we haven't had any winter this year. And I just felt very confident with my staff and how we were ready for this storm. I just want to let you guys know about that. And hats off to my staff too. You guys did an excellent job. Real quick update on the Veterans Plaza. The lights and poles have all come in. Sonic tubes have been ordered, and I'm having rebar cages built for our footings for the lights. As soon as I get those cages, we'll be jumping back into that project. Today, I got approval for the quote submitted for the decorative lighting downtown. Similar to what we have on High Street between 1st and 2nd. We're going to be doing the section on 2nd Street between Mill or High and East Front. Cal Water bucked up and provided the funding for us. I've been working with Bob Allen and the chamber, and I placed the order for all the lights and hardware and everything for that project. And as soon as it comes in, we'll be jumping on that one. And that's all I have from Public Works. Thank you, guys.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Public Works Director. Okay, Fire Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. At the last meeting, I did report that we were sending staff out to assist with the surge in COVID patients at hospitals around the state. They have all come back. The last group came back on Friday. We sent 7 staff members out on 3 different deployments to 2 different hospitals. And they all came back, expressed a very positive experience on what they were able to do and help out at the hospitals and stuff. 2 of them that came back Friday were dismissed early. So this is a good thing.
Right.
And there are no additional orders at this time to fill those spots. So I think we're starting to see a turnaround with the surge that we're in the middle of. Related to that, our EMS call volume through the month of December was all the way up to about a 30% increase. And then from January, it dipped to 23%, and the last 2 weeks, it's down to about 12. So again, another sign that we're hopefully coming out on the other end of this surge with these COVID patients. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that we continue in that direction. So, thank you.
Any news on the vaccines? Where are we? What are we going to use for vaccine centers? What are we doing?
Not as of yet. We have been working within the confines of what the county is doing. Last week, we did get permission to kind of go outside the county. So we've got authorization from the county. We've completed training and things like that. So we are reaching out to medical facilities, doctors. I know United is in the process getting started on that. We're going to reach out to them. Our goal is for our way to help is to, as they're establishing their sites, is for us to potentially go mobile and be able to utilize some of our equipment and staff to go out to our seniors that might not be able to get to a facility. So that is our objective. Right now, it's just waiting for the opportunity.
We just don't have the vaccines yet.
I did read that there was a shortage now in, I believe it was Merced County. Fresno was supposed to start back up today. Again, with you know, continuing with firefighters, healthcare providers. I believe law enforcement, they've started this week. So hopefully they can get through this obstacle of supply. And once we can, we're ready to assist in any way possible.
Thanks for that update.
Question, Chief Peterson.
Yes.
Did Dr. Ayala's office contact you?
Not yet. I did go over to the clinic.
Mm-hmm. I can't hear.
I did go over to the local Adventist Health Clinic, where I understand he does work out of there part-time. He unfortunately had just left. Okay. I did leave my business card with my cell phone number and expressed to another doctor that was there that we would be interested in helping in any way that we could and having potentially something here in town. Unfortunately have not heard anything back as of yet.
Okay. I'll try and reach out to him as well. So I'll remind him.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Chief Gomez.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Just to update on the staffing, the promotions we had recently. City Manager mentioned one in December. That was December 12th. Alejandro Alvarez got promoted to Sergeant, Police Sergeant. And on January 16th, Justin Holt, Johnny Serta got promoted to Sergeant, and Renee Garza got promoted to Police Commander. And he came back to work today and started. So I'm very happy about that. A lot of change is going on with all those promotions. It caused shortages in field training officer and the K-9 unit, and also we're trying to get the motorcycles going again. I got them fixed, and we're going to be testing here, doing our interviews soon to get the motorcycles back on the street. I know the last few months we've talked about that. Traffic problems out there around the high school, out there on Dinuba and Wright. So we're going to get the motorcycles going too. So a lot of change. It's hard sometimes for people, but we're going to get going. I'm positive it's the most change that the police department has seen ever regarding the staff level. The other thing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the homeless and the presentation. Just one piece that Council Member Guerra brought up, and this is really for the new council members, because we've had presentations on the homeless going back a few months now. And out there, police have been out there quite a bit. There have been quite a few. I have to disagree with that part of their presentation tonight. Quite a few that are not Selma residents. And I have dealt with them personally. Well, I've been out there, I've done press releases where we've got guns out there. They're not from Selma. I don't know what it's like now. I'll be candid with you. Since WestCare took over in November, we've had less calls for service out there. So I actually have not been out there myself in quite a while. I did go out there once they took over and talk to them. But to my knowledge, we haven't had a lot of calls for service out there. So, Councilmember Guerra had mentioned the businesses around there have been impacted by some of the homeless and there's others that don't, that never, that are resistant to services too, that are in the area that cause problems there. So I just want to make that comment on for the new council members. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to council reports. Council Member Mendoza Navarro.
Just a question, did we do recreation?
Oh, no. Sorry. Parks and Community Services Chair.
No problem.
We haven't seen you all night. There you are.
I've been hiding. Just real quick, I think you're aware 2 weeks ago, Little League decided to have a tournament. And so I zoomed on their meeting last week for about 2-hour meeting. They've agreed not to do it again, and they're just looking ways to raise funds. So they did work with me at the meeting. So we'll continue to monitor that. Hopefully when we get to the red tier soon, baseball and softball are in the red tier. So that is encouraging. The Arts Center had a contest this last weekend, kind of a talent show contest, well received. And I know our city manager, Teresa, was one of the judges. So they are doing some fundraising. They'll be doing a Valentine's event fundraiser, and they're looking at doing another drive-in movie fundraiser too. And working with Raina tonight over the phone, she's wanting some dates. If you could work out tonight, February 8th is the week of, is where we talked about for a special meeting for the parks. If we could work on that tonight, maybe setting a date and time, then we do our presentation to follow up from our special meeting on the 22nd.
Would that be during the day?
You know, AM or PM. The special meeting last Friday was 9 a.m. So
is council okay with the 9 a.m. start date a week from today?
I got to check tomorrow. I'll check probably.
Can Raina just poll us in the morning as to availability for the remainder of the council members? Okay. And that will be to consider the plan that we heard from Mr. Titelian and his interaction with the city plan.
Exactly. It'll be our evaluation of everything we need to go through and what we found out, and move forward from that point.
Okay. And you'll be inviting Mr. Titelian to zoom into that meeting or attend?
Correct. Yeah, it'll be a public meeting, so but we'll make sure he gets a notice of it.
And anybody else who wants to attend?
Sure. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Sorry to overlook you there.
No worries.
Your report.
No worries. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza Navarro, now you're on.
Now I'm on. Okay, thank you. Well, first I wanted to thank city staff. I was trying to do that last time, but we went really late last time, especially Raina. She's always, very helpful with everything. So I attended, I wasn't able to attend all the classes for the new mayor and city council trainings, but they are recorded, so I will be watching those. I was able to do a couple of the meet and greets, and so I attended the League of California Cities, the Latino Caucus, and so that was really interesting. I was able to meet with various new council members throughout the state of California, and a lot of first timers. So it was really nice. And I also attended just a couple of coffee time or something like that. I can't remember what it was. I attended the Central Valley Training Center graduation. It was really nice to see the 22 students graduating. Kind of sad because they weren't able to have, too many people there. And then just on another note, I wanted to just let the community know that if they ever want to speak to me, if they ever want to, meet with me, I'm available pretty, my availability is pretty open. I'm available to talk to anybody. So if you have questions for me, just reach out to me through the city, my city email. And because I'd be happy to talk to anybody out there to, if any concerns or anything like that. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Trujillo.
I also attended the Central Valley Training graduation, which was really nice. It's nice to see the city of Selma getting involved and getting, with the high-speed rail. Also, try to attend the superintendent's virtual meeting, and that was was kicked off, but I was luckily to be put back into a very later day, and I was able to participate. So I really was happy for that. I think it's really important. I think that we as a council, just as the mayor was saying, that we have to get involved. And I was lucky to fit into one of those meetings late in the evening. And I thank God, because it was actually good, and was able to give, my input, and I appreciate that. And other than that, again, Shane, thank you for all the hard work. As I seen everybody out there cleaning those, the guys out there while it was raining, and you know what, it meant a lot driving by these roads and seeing that they weren't flooded. So congratulations. I thank you guys. I thank all our staff. But Shane, that was good work you guys did. Other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Guerra.
Okay, and I too, I'll echo, I attended the meeting for the search for the new superintendent, which was really nice and informative. That was nice that they did. As for city council and our city staff, along with city manager Teresa Galvan, our chief of police, and our fire chief, which really was a great thing, because it does also show unity, that they want our input as well. So I really appreciated that. And then I too attended the graduation for the Central Valley Training Center for the 22 candidates, which was really nice. And again, it was very, very touching. And I just wish that the poor guys all had jobs right when they walked out of there, because that's the thing, that was the number one thing they came to us and said, you have a job, And I did speak to Deanna Gomez, which is now the director of the Caltrans, and was trying to see how we can kind of close that gap, with them having a graduation, maybe getting them set up 2 weeks before their graduation with their test for the Caltrans or high speed, because, realistically, we all know it takes at least 6 to a year to get on with the state. I mean, that's realistic. Maybe getting on with, even they're saying they'll get on with a contractor, a city, somewhere where they can have jobs pretty much almost lined up. So they're not out there, without a job, because some of them, they even told us they quit their jobs just to do this program, hoping for a better paying job. So hopefully, that'll be a direction that we can kind of look at as a city, and then stay in contact with Deanna Gomez, she's agreed to do what she can to close that gap. So, we'll kind of keep in touch and see what we can do with that.
Yeah, in the last 2 weeks of the program, we actually have what is called a job fair for them. We bring in multiple contractors, anybody that's kind of tied into the high-speed rail, because they outsource a lot of that work, right? So we had multiple companies come in and interview every single one of those students and go through that process, not just to get them a job, but also to get them experience they need for that process. And there were quite a few candidates they thought that they were interested in as well. We also, what thought was interesting is the individuals that just leased space next to them actually came into that and interviewed some of the students as well, because they're going to be opening some positions. So you're seeing that kind of demand and how we work through that process. And after the program, what happens is we are contracted actually for a year to follow up with them, to get them out there, continue working with them, to help them get those job creations and get those tools in their toolkits so they can be successful. So it's not just about graduation. We are following them all the way through to make sure that they are successful.
Sure. And then too, I'd like to echo where I want to thank the entire city staff for everything you folks have done. I mean, during this COVID, it's just been very challenging for our entire city, our businesses. We're hoping that now we're going to get through it, and some of these businesses that are struggling at this time, hopefully we'll get some of this relief money and be able to open again. So hopefully that's in the works. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Mayor Pro Tem, Joe?
Yes, hi. I'd like to thank the city staff also because they've helped me immensely since I'm a newbie. Whatever I need, whatever I ask, they've been on board so much. Thank you so much, city staff, on everything. I was at the graduation too. I was pretty proud to see these guys get up there and get their diploma or certificate. And so they're very proud of what they learned also. So it was good to see. I want to let out also people, they know where they found me because I'm working most of the time with my hours. So I already have a book there, and whenever they come in, they're telling me something needs to be fixed. So I'm writing it down. So it's going to go to, as soon as I get it written down, we're going to start doing some stuff that's really probably minor stuff, but at least it needs to be fixed. And when, our city people can't see everything, maybe I can, we could start, maybe little areas here and there, and at least start with this little stuff in the city. That's about it. But I'm wondering, I don't know if I talk now, I am promoting Portuguese Hall's having a fundraiser. Can I talk now on it or do I have to wait?
Go for it.
Okay. Okay. Portuguese Hall is doing a fundraiser February 13th. It's $40. It's a spaghetti dinner for a family of 4. Okay, and you get spaghetti, garlic bread, cupcakes, and a bottle of wine. It's $40. It is a drive up, 4 o'clock pickup to 7 o'clock. So I am taking orders. I'm just taking orders. That means your name, and then you're responsible to pick it up and pay them the money. So basically, I've started going around, helping them. That's a hall that usually my Lions Club go to, and I feel like all year they didn't get any business either. It's kind of like, with the COVID, they haven't had too much to keep going on. And so when they came up with this project, I said, I'm on it, and I got you guys, I got Chamber, I got Lions. So at least we could get them going for a little bit of change. So I appreciate it. Let me know if you guys want one. It's $40 for a meal for a family of 4. Okay. So you could text me or email me and I'll put your name down so I could get a list to them to see. They make sure they know how much they could cook. Okay.
We'll be down for 4, Bev.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I want to echo that. Thanks to the staff, amazing staff. Selma just held the city together during just a really incredibly trying experience. And, I heard just a glimmer, just like from the fire chief, just a glimmer of hope. I also heard from our coordinator, the person who's picked up the trash around the city, that she is thinking about resuming getting out there as soon as as soon as it keeps going in the right direction and it's safe to go out with a number of people. So that was good to hear. That I attended a meeting with a developer last week with the city manager and the city planner and assistant city manager. It's in its initial stages. Selma is absolutely happening. Selma is moving. So it's really good. And it's good to hear about Amberwood finally turning in an application. Rockwell Pond, Rockwell Park, the hotel, crime is down. Our fire department is rendering aid to other departments, and we're doing our own paramed. So we are moving forward as a city. Sometimes it doesn't seem like that. There's tension. But that's what happens when things are happening and we're moving forward. And I like what we did tonight as a council, moving our way towards a little more consensus and getting on the same page. I hope that continues. I attended my first Fresno COG meeting. I'll talk about that in a little more detail. I got to speak at the first graduation of the Central Valley training course in Selma. Very touching, just wonderful to see those 22 graduate. Just what a success story. I attended the Arts Center talent show that our city manager was a judge at on Saturday. And we really have some seriously talented singers, dancers, and musicians. It's kind of easy to forget about that with all the need of the businesses and all of the really urgent issues that are going on due to COVID. It was nice to take a step back and see these incredible artists who also going through a period of need where, the Pioneer Village and the Arts Center is not able to stage plays and to make money and to raise funds. Just another problem with COVID. I also let's see, I got to hear from April Durham of Rincon, who's a consultant with the city following up on the downtown overlay district, is a business owner downtown. She was asking me questions about what we're looking for downtown and how, you know, the benefit, how changing and making the codes a little more flexible downtown might really result in some freed up development energy down there. And I was more than happy to spend a half an hour of my day with a Rincon consultant, and I appreciated that call. Also, just a request here, Moses Stites, can we ask him to do a presentation in the future on microgrid analysis? He's doing a microgrid where they're really getting into it at the Fresno County Rural Transit Agency. They're ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve on doing studies on cities and their capability to charge electric vehicles. And we kind of went in it the wrong way. We kind of went into electric vehicles, and FCRTA gave all the cities, you know, charging stations without really knowing what the capacity of PG&E and what the capacity of our grid is. So it's coming down to, well, this is happening, electric vehicles. I mean, look at the requirements where the combustion engine is going away, at least as of this cycle in 2025 or 2030 or 2040 in California, where emission standards have to be cut. So it's going to move in that direction of electrical vehicles, but we haven't really figured out if we've got the power to cover all these electrical vehicles. So Moses is doing some good work on that. I think he's going to be presenting at various cities. Maybe we could get him to present to us as well on this EV technology. And where it hits the city is he's going to be talking to the city about acquiring or using land that it already has for these microgrids in order to be able to have capacity for the next 40, 50 years to power these electrical vehicles. If we start now, we'll have the capacity in 2040 and 2050 and 2060. So it's really forward thinking. It's very interesting to look at that. Something we should take a look at. So back to the COG meeting. This is my first one in a while. And I got the good news, more good news, that the bids are going out for the Golden State project from the Golden State Corridor, which is the old 99 from Selma to Fowler. The bids are going out in March. Construction should be starting in June of 2021. That means that road in front of McDonald's, it's going to get resurfaced, finally. The oleander, gone. It's going to look good. So it's going to look better. It's going to beautify our town. We're finally moving in that direction, and hopefully with a bike lane to follow after that. Finally, if the city is looking for additional police vehicles, the mayor of Clovis said he sits on the Air Pollution Control Board, and there are electric police cars available at a pretty reduced rate. If anybody wants his email address, he's more than happy to talk to anybody from the city and point us in the right direction to see about acquiring those vehicles down the line. Okay, and with that, we'll move back to oral communications. Do we have anybody else on the line who would like to address the council one last time tonight? City Clerk. And when at the end I say, is there a motion to adjourn? It's kind of formal. You know, it's just one of those things. We don't really need a first and a second. We've always just adjourned, but we've just done a motion to adjourn.
Hi, Mayor. My apologies. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Thank you. I see we have Mrs. Delgadillo on the line with her hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Victoria Delgadillo.
We can't hear you, Vicki.
In the reserve?
Now we can hear you.
How much is in the reserve for the city budget thus far for
20%, is that correct, Mr. Finance Director?
budget? And then I wanted to mention about the graduates for the building and trades. The Workforce Investment Board does a lot of recruiting, and they have quite a bit of different jobs that come in there daily. And that would be a very good way to link our graduates coming out of the program with the Workforce Investment Board. I know they have meetings, and it would be very good for our city to connect with them for any people in the city that might need a job. I just think that's a very good avenue. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was about the park. It's going to be very exciting to see all of these different fields available for the kids, because we have a huge shortage of fields for the kids
Can't hear you.
to provide them with a good location to practice and to play and to just develop. I think sports is a wonderful way for students to develop and to learn and to grow. So I'm really hoping that this park can provide a lot of great things for everyone in the city. And it's a really good opportunity to plan a beautiful park for the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do see we have another caller. Hi, caller. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Teresa Salas. I was just wondering if you have a timeline for the traffic signal that's supposed to go up on Dinuba and McCall Avenue. I live in that area, and during the weekdays at 5 o'clock, that traffic is so backed up coming from Manning Avenue and coming towards Selma from the old highway. And it's just, so I was just curious as to what the timeline is to get that signal up.
I don't have an official timeline. I will say that it's currently being engineered and designed at the moment. As you're aware, or you may be aware, that we do have a funding mechanism. So that's a good part to get that installed. But we are working as speedily as fast as we can to get that through.
Okay, so you have money, but no plan yet.
Well, we have it. We're working on the design. That's the biggest mechanism, so that you can get it fully funded. So once that's engineered, then we can put it out to bid and go forward. There's going to have to be acquisition of property because one of the properties is in the county. So it is going to be a process to get that thing, that project done.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Robertson, we have no other hands raised at this time.
Thank you. With that, I'll bring it back to council. I forgot one thing, the TOD program. We have the transit-oriented development program. I don't know if we've come up with a project yet, but that opened in February, and it'll be, the deadline will be fast approaching at the end of March, just for city to take a look at that. And with that, is our motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.